Senator Santorum, thanks for joining us. Sum up the thesis of this book, if you would.
Well, the thesis of the book is that there's a whole group of people in America, in fact, a big swath of America, that is being ignored, left behind, not included in the discussion, I think, for either party. Particularly, though, I would argue the Republican Party, and that's, I call them blue-collar conservatives. The folks out there that are working people, most of whom don't have college degrees, folks that really still understand the value of work and the importance of work and responsibility, and people who understand the importance of family and faith, believe in freedom and limited government. So you would say, wow, those are conservative Republican voters, and in many cases they're not. And in fact, a lot of them aren't voting at all because they don't really see either party talking to them about the concerns they have and trying to create an opportunity for them to live the American dream. And you look at the Democratic Party, they talk about these voters a lot, and in fact talk about how they can give them certain things, whether it's free health care or subsidized health care, or increasing their wages with government minimum wage increases, or whatever, a whole laundry list of things that government benefits that they're trying to help. But of course, most of these folks don't want government benefits. They don't want to be on a government program. They want to work. They want to have jobs that are well-paying jobs that create an opportunity for them to support themselves and their families. And that sounds like more of a Republican voter. But unfortunately, Republicans, our economic message, as you know, Tucker, I think you've seen this over the years, that we talk like economists. I mean, we're sort of wrapped up in the rightness of our position, but we talk about balancing the budget. We talk about cutting taxes for high-income individuals to create jobs, and then cutting government, and particularly a lot of benefits. And if you're the average American listening to this economic plan, you say, well, where am I in that plan? What are you doing for me, the people who are seeing their wages stagnating, not getting the increases, not seeing inflation eat away? And that's really who this book is written for, and for Republicans to understand why they're not succeeding in getting these votes.
Well, it's a little perplexing, as you just pointed out, because some of these voters seem winnable by Republicans. So why wouldn't the Republican Party be talking to and about working class voters?
Well, because it really requires you to not think macro but micro. And that's a very difficult thing for Republicans. The Republican idea on economics is a rising tide lifts all boats. Well, I agree that a rising tide lifts all boats unless your boat has a hole in it. And then the rising tide is a very dangerous thing, because when that tide rises, your boat sinks, and you're not in very good situation, particularly depending on how high the tide is.
Yes.
And so you have a lot of folks who have holes in their boats. And it's everything from not having skills to get jobs that are well-paying jobs that sustain a family, not having education, not maybe having a drug or substance abuse problem, having problems at home or in difficult families. There's a whole laundry list of things. I mean, all of us have some holes in our boats, but there's a lot of Americans who don't see this rising tide really necessarily helping them. And so what I've done in this book, and what I try to do in the campaign, is specifically address areas where blue-collar America, where average Americans can see some direct economic benefit to them, or some opportunity for them. And that's why I talk a lot about specific sectors of the economy where large portions of these types of workers will find employment that's actually going to be family-sustaining employment in the area of energy, manufacturing, and related spin-off and service industries related to those. And then focus on the other side, because it's not just economics. It's one of the problems is culture, and that the family is breaking down, community is breaking down. And so we talk a lot about the importance of marriage and the family as part of building that healthier American dream.
President Obama has talked a lot about income inequality and its rise. Is he right? And should Republicans be echoing those concerns?
Yeah, the numbers don't bear out the rhetoric. The fact of the matter is things haven't changed, but they haven't gotten better. And I think that's really the issue. And in fact, relative to Europe and Canada, the opportunity of mobility in America is not as good as it is in some of those countries. And so while the idea that there's this exploding gap of income inequality is not necessarily borne out by the facts. The fact is that there are serious problems in America that need to be addressed, and that there are people in America who are not getting ahead. And I think instead of arguing the debate as to whether we're better or worse or things are, let's just focus on the fact that there are millions of Americans out there who are not seeing their quality of life improved, and what can we do to address those. And there are substantive things we can do. Everything from what I mentioned, looking at the economy, looking at the culture, looking at education. One of the things I talk about in the book is providing vocational education, career tracks other than tracks that lead to college. 70% of Americans don't have college degrees, and that number isn't going to change much. And so what are we doing to provide the necessary skills in high school, as well as technical skills after high school, to provide the skills that are necessary for people to work with their hands as well as their head?
Yes. How did this all happen? What happened to working class America, to rural America? Why hasn't the rising tide of stock market is obviously on fire, but it hasn't, as you said, helped a lot of people in the interior of the country? Something's changed. What is it, do you think?
Well, I would say it's a variety of different things. Obviously, the economy has changed. We have much more globalization, open markets. When that happens, there's competition that comes from overseas. And overall, I think the argument is, and I think there's probably a legitimate argument to be made here, that overall America does better when we have that competition from overseas, and it drives down prices because those prices are lower for everybody. And the competition is, as we all know, is a good thing. So globalization is a positive, but it can be a negative if you're the person that's losing their job as a result of this competition.
Right.
And I make the argument that, look, I'm not against globalization. I mean, I understand a global economy, but we have to be understanding of the impact case by case as those free trade agreements and other agreements that we have to the American worker. And I voted for a lot of free trade agreements. I didn't vote for NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, because I didn't think I thought that would actually be very devastating more than it would be helpful. I think, in my opinion, that's been borne out. At least it certainly hasn't improved the situation for America. But we need to look at free trade agreements, but we also have to look at the fact that America has not been competitive because our taxes are higher. We have the highest corporate tax in the world. We have a very hostile regulatory environment in this country that has gotten even, multiples worse under this administration. You look at the litigation environment here. You look at the educational gaps that we have, particularly for worker training, for manufacturing and those types of jobs. So the government, the role the government has played in making us uncompetitive, I think is pretty profound. And that's why one of the reasons I wrote the book is that I think American manufacturers can be competitive in a global economy if the government creates a level playing field vis-a-vis our competitors. And so I have a whole laundry list of things that I go through in the book that talk about how we can do just that.
So the trade gap with China, for example, has resulted, as you just pointed out, in cheaper consumer products for everybody, and that's, I guess, a good thing. But it certainly hasn't helped American manufacturing. You almost never hear anybody complain about that. Why?
Well, because most people aren't in manufacturing. Most people haven't lost their jobs or getting lower paid jobs. I mean, a very small percentage, relatively small percentage of Americans are actually participating in manufacturing. Certainly, substantially less than it was before. And so, if you're a professional, or if you're someone who works in the service industry and you're looking at getting something for a substantially lower price because it's been manufactured overseas, you're happy to go to Walmart. But as you notice, Tucker, Walmart is now very focused. And we run an ad campaign for the last year almost, talking about how they're trying to move things back here to America and try to encourage manufacturing here in this country. So I think even those who have benefited greatly, like Walmart, from this globalization and having these products made overseas, see the benefits of having these products made here. I think there's a famous conversation that occurred between Henry Ford and Walter Reuther, and who was the head of the union that Ford had to deal with, the Auto Workers Union, and he was walking through the plant and showed Reuther a machine. He said, "This machine's going to replace, I forget how many of your workers." And Reuther responded, "Well, that's great." He said, "But how many cars is this machine going to buy?" And so that's really the tension here, is that yes, we can replace workers with foreign competition or with automation,